The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called with unprecedented urgency. Representatives from 1,200 species filled the massive chamber on Nexus Prime, their varied forms creating a sea of colors, scales, feathers, and exotic biology that would have amazed any human observer. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert the cacophony of languages into something resembling order. Supreme Chancellor HFY, a towering crystalline being whose body caught and refracted the chamber's lights into dancing rainbows, struck the ceremonial gong with one of her many appendages. The sound resonated through the hall, and gradually the chaos subsided into expectant silence. Fellow beings of the galaxy, HFY began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. We gather today to address the greatest threat our civilization has ever faced. The species known as humans have become too dangerous to ignore. A ripple of agreement passed through the assembly. The Zephyrian ambassador, resembling a cross between a squid and a storm cloud, pulsed with agitated colors. They multiply like a plague. In mere centuries, they've spread to over 300 systems. Their expansion rate is unprecedented, added General Korth of the hegemony, his insectoid features clicking with annoyance. They terraform worlds that should be uninhabitable. They adapt to environments that kill other species within hours. Ambassador Telnash, speaking for the ancient ethereal collective, projected thoughts directly into the minds of those present. We have observed their history. They wage war upon themselves with a creativity and brutality that defies comprehension. Now they turn those same capabilities outward. The accusations continued to pour forth. Humans violated unspoken galactic norms. They refused to acknowledge the established order of species hierarchy. They treated all other species as equals, which was somehow both insulting to superior races and threatening to those who preferred subjugation. Their very existence seemed to upset the delicate balance that had maintained peace for millennia. They show no respect for proper protocols, complained the merchant prince of the Trading Federation. They haggle with everyone, regardless of species rank. They have disrupted established trade routes and undercut our prices with their efficient methods. And their culture, shrieked a representative of the Purity Collective. They contaminate everything they touch with their chaotic influences. Art, music, literature, they spread it all without regard for racial boundaries. Chancellor HFY listened to the litany of complaints with growing resolve. The humans had to be stopped before they upset the galactic order beyond repair. The motion before us today is clear. We must declare war upon humanity and contain this threat before it grows beyond our ability to manage. The vote was swift and overwhelming. Only a handful of abstentions marked the otherwise unanimous decision. Within hours, the formal declaration would be transmitted to Earth and every human colony across the galaxy. The message reached Earth during what happened to be a Tuesday morning in Geneva, where the Human Diplomatic Corps maintained their modest offices in an unremarkable building that most galactic species considered embarrassingly small for a spacefaring civilization's headquarters. Ambassador Sarah Chen was enjoying her coffee and reading intelligence reports when her aide rushed in with the expression, somewhere between panic and bewilderment. "Ma'am, we've received an official communication from the Galactic Council. They've declared war on us." Sarah looked up from her tablet, blinking once. "All of them?" "Yes, ma'am." The vote was 1,200 to 37, with 15 abstentions. Sarah set down her coffee cup with the careful precision of someone processing unexpected news. What's their stated reasoning?" Her aide consulted his tablet. "Rapid expansion, cultural contamination, disrespect for established hierarchies, economic disruption, and," he paused, "excessive adaptability." "Excessive adaptability," Sarah repeated slowly. "They're declaring war on us for being too good at not dying." "That appears to be the gist of it, yes, ma'am." Sarah leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Then she pressed her comm unit. "Get me Director Harrison." Within minutes, Director James Harrison appeared on her screen from his office in the Luna Defense Coordination Center. His weathered face showed the kind of calm that came from decades of expecting the worst and planning for it. "Sarah, I assume you're calling about our new diplomatic status? You've already heard?" The declaration came through military channels 30 seconds after the diplomatic ones. "How are you planning to respond?" Sarah shrugged. "I was thinking of sending a polite note acknowledging receipt of their declaration and asking if they'd prefer to schedule the war for a more convenient time. Maybe suggest they coordinate with our calendar department." Harrison's mouth twitched upward almost imperceptibly. That seems reasonable. We're a bit busy with the Titan terraforming project next month. Exactly what I was thinking. What's our current readiness status? Condition yellow, same as always. Should I bump it up to orange? Sarah considered this. Let's see how they want to play this first. If they're planning a formal war with proper declarations and protocols, we should probably be polite about it. If they're thinking more along the lines of a surprise attack, she left the sentence hanging. Understood. I'll have the fleets maintain current positions but with enhanced sensor sweeps. And Sarah, you might want to give President Williams a heads up. Already on my list. Thanks, James. After the call ended, Sarah drafted a response that would become legendary in galactic diplomatic history for its understated tone. She confirmed receipt of the declaration, expressed regret that diplomatic solutions had been exhausted, and formally requested a timeline for the commencement of hostilities so that human colonies could adjust their shipping schedules accordingly. She also included a brief note that humans looked forward to learning about galactic warfare, traditions, and hoped that the conflict could be conducted with proper respect for military customs on all sides. The message was transmitted within the hour. When it reached the Galactic Council, Chancellor Vexhai read it 3 times before sharing it with the other council members. The response sparked heated debate. Some species interpreted the human reaction as evidence of cowardice or ignorance. Others found it deeply unsettling. They're asking us to schedule our attack. General Korth clicked his mandibles in confusion. What manner of species requests advance notice of their own destruction? Ambassador Telnash projected unease into the chamber. Perhaps they do not understand the seriousness of our declaration. Or, suggested a voice from the back of the chamber, perhaps they understand it better than we do. The war would begin within the week, as the council decided to interpret human politeness as weakness. It was a mistake that would reshape their understanding of the universe. The first shots of the Galactic War were fired at the human colony of New Brisbane, a modest settlement on the edge of human space that specialized in agricultural exports and served as a way station for merchant vessels. The attacking force consisted of 3 hegemony destroyers under the command of war leader Thexmal, a veteran of 17 campaigns who had earned his rank through decisive victories against lesser species. Thexmal had expected either panic or desperate resistance. What he encountered instead would haunt his remaining years and become required reading at military academies across the galaxy. The human response to his demand for immediate surrender came from someone who identified herself as Colony Administrator Janet Morrison. War Leader Thexmal, this is Administrator Morrison. We acknowledge your declaration of hostilities and appreciate you following proper protocols by announcing your presence. We'll need approximately 20 minutes to complete our current grain shipment to the freighter Prosperity, after which we'll be ready to proceed with whatever you have planned. Thexmal stared at his communications officer, wondering if the translation software had malfunctioned. Did she just ask us to wait while they finish their grocery delivery? That appears to be accurate, sir. The war leader had conquered 14 worlds. He had reduced proud civilizations to ash and scattered their survivors across the galaxy as refugees. In all his years of warfare, no one had ever asked him to wait while they completed routine commerce. Communications informed them that we are not operating on their schedule. They will surrender immediately or face bombardment. The response came back within minutes. War leader, we understand your position, but the grain shipment is contractually obligated and insured through the Galactic Commerce Authority. If we breach contract, the insurance claims alone would fund a small fleet. Surely you can appreciate the economic implications? We're perfectly willing to surrender afterward if that's still your preference. Thexmal's secondary arms began the unconscious clenching pattern that indicated dangerous levels of stress. Are they negotiating surrender terms based on shipping schedules? Sir, I believe they are. Commence bombardment. Target their administrative center. The first volley of plasma fire struck New Brisbane's modest government building and surrounding structures. Through his ship's sensors, Thexmal watched the energy signatures bloom across the colony's surface. He waited for the customary panic signals, the scattered communications, the desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, his communications officer looked up with an expression of complete bewilderment. Sir, we're receiving another transmission from Administrator Morrison. Patch it through. War Leader Thexmal, we appreciate your demonstration of superior firepower. However, We should mention that our administrative offices moved to the underground complex 3 days ago. The building you just destroyed was our old insurance office, which we've been meaning to demolish for months. Thank you for handling that for us. It saves us the demolition costs. The war leader's stress patterns intensified. Underground complex? Oh yes, standard procedure. When we received notice that the galaxy was declaring war, we activated Protocol 7. All essential personnel and equipment moved to hardened positions. We've also dispersed our agricultural equipment to prevent damage to the food supply. No point in letting perfectly good farmland get scorched, don't you think? Thexmol turned to his intelligence officer. What is Protocol 7? Sir, we don't have information on human military protocols. Our intelligence focused on their expansion patterns and cultural practices. Find me everything about their defensive capabilities, now. While his staff scrambled to gather intelligence, the human colony continued its incomprehensible behavior. The grain shipment completed right on schedule. The freighter Prosperity departed with a polite thank you message to both the colony and Thexmol's fleet for maintaining safe shipping lanes. Then, Administrator Morrison's voice crackled over the communications again. War Leader, now that we've finished our commercial obligations, we're ready to proceed. However, we should inform you that Commodore Zhang's battle group will arrive in approximately 6 hours. If you're planning to complete your mission here, you might want to work efficiently. Battle group? Thexmol's voice climbed higher than his species' normal vocal range. You called for military assistance? Oh, we didn't call anyone. Commodore Zhang was already en route for a scheduled supply run. When news of the war declaration reached the fleet, they adjusted course to investigate. Standard procedure, really? Thexmol consulted his tactical displays. His 3 destroyers represented a significant force by galactic standards, capable of reducing most colony worlds to submission within hours. The idea that humans considered this a situation requiring investigation, rather than evacuation, suggested either supreme confidence or complete insanity. How many ships in this battle group? Commodore Zhang commands the 3rd Fleet. I believe that's... Let me check. 47 vessels. Plus support craft. The war leader's stress patterns reached levels that triggered automatic medical monitoring from his ship's systems. 47 ships represented more firepower than most species possessed in their entire military, yet the humans spoke of it as a routine supply mission. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, our scans of the colony are showing anomalous readings. The underground complex appears to extend much deeper than standard civilian shelters, and there are energy signatures consistent with defensive installations. Thexmol studied the sensor data with growing unease. What he had assumed to be a simple agricultural colony was revealing layers of complexity that challenged his understanding of human settlement patterns. Administrator Morrison, I demand to know the true nature of your defensive capabilities. War Leader, we're a standard agricultural colony, with a population of approximately 50,000. Our defensive capabilities consist of the measures required to protect civilian populations during hostile action. I thought that was self-evident. What measures? Standard ones. Underground shelters, food storage, medical facilities, limited manufacturing capability, communication systems, power generation, and defensive installations sufficient to maintain colony security. Each item on the list sent new waves of concern through Thexmol's tactical assessment. Underground shelters suggested prepared positions. Food storage indicated ability to withstand siege. Manufacturing capability implied self-sufficiency. Defensive installations could mean anything from small arms to planetary defense systems. Define limited manufacturing capability. We can produce basic necessities, tools, equipment, spare parts for agricultural machinery, that sort of thing. During emergencies, we can manufacture defensive systems, medical supplies, and communication equipment. Nothing fancy, just what's needed to maintain colony operations. Thexmol realized with growing horror that the humans were describing a fully militarized installation disguised as a farming community. Every human colony he had encountered shared these same characteristics, but his intelligence services had dismissed them as civilian infrastructure. His tactical officer looked up from her displays with an expression of species-appropriate panic. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts bearing Vector 17 Mark IV. The human battle group? Unknown, sir. Contacts are still 6 hours out, but preliminary readings suggest Significant mass signatures. As if summoned by their conversation, Administrator Morrison's voice returned to fill the bridge. War Leader, you should be aware that Commodore Zhang sent a courtesy message to Fleet Command about the situation here. It's possible that additional units may arrive to observe the proceedings. I thought you should know in case it affects your tactical planning. Thexmol stared at his displays, watching the steady approach of unknown contacts that his instruments suggested carried more firepower than his entire species could field. He had arrived expecting to demonstrate galactic superiority over a backward agricultural world. Instead, he was beginning to suspect that he had stumbled into something far beyond his comprehension. War Leader Thexmol made his decision with the desperate logic of a military commander, watching his mission spiral beyond all recognition. Rather than wait for the human battle group to arrive, he would complete his assault on New Brisbane immediately and present the incoming fleet with a fait accompli. All ships, commence planetary bombardment. Target the agricultural installations and underground facilities. Maximum firepower. The 3 hegemony destroyers unleashed their full arsenal. Plasma beams carved trenches across farmland, while fusion missiles sought out the hardened entrances to the colony's underground complex. For 17 minutes, the bombardment continued with devastating precision. When the weapons fell silent, Thexmol surveyed his handiwork with satisfaction. The surface of New Brisbane showed the characteristic scarring of effective orbital bombardment. Surely no civilian installation could survive such an assault. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving another transmission from the colony. Thexmol's satisfaction curdled into something approaching nausea. Put it through. Administrator Morrison's voice remained as calm and professional as before. War Leader Thexmol, thank you for the demonstration. Your gunnery crews show excellent precision. However, I should inform you that our defensive systems are now fully active. Impossible. We've destroyed your surface installations. Yes, those were mostly agricultural equipment and some old storage facilities. The important infrastructure is deeper down. Now I'm obligated to warn you that continued hostile action may trigger automated defensive responses. We'd prefer to avoid that if possible. Automated defensive responses? Standard colony protection protocols. Really, War Leader? Didn't your intelligence briefings cover basic human settlement patterns? Before Thexmol could respond, his tactical officer's voice cut across the bridge with sharp urgency. Sir, energy readings from the planet surface are spiking. Multiple contacts rising from concealed positions. Through his ship's sensors, Thexmol watched in fascination and growing terror as the apparently destroyed agricultural colony transformed before his eyes. Sections of farmland slid aside to reveal launch silos. Barn-like structures unfolded into communication arrays. What had appeared to be irrigation systems revealed themselves as defensive sensor grids. Sir, I'm counting 36 missile launch facilities. No, wait, 43. Energy signatures suggest combat-grade targeting systems. And, sir, those aren't standard defensive missiles. Thexmol studied the tactical display with the growing realization that he had made a catastrophic error. What type of missiles? Ship killers, sir. Analysis suggests multi-stage guidance systems with adaptive targeting capabilities. How many? Sir, each silo appears to contain multiple launch tubes. Conservative estimate. 600 active missiles ready to fire. The War Leader felt his species' evolutionary response to mortal danger. A sudden clarity of thought combined with the overwhelming urge to flee. His 3 destroyers carried enough firepower to reduce most planets to molten slag. Yet they faced a defensive installation that outgunned them by orders of magnitude. Administrator Morrison, he called, his voice carrying none of its earlier authority. Perhaps we should discuss terms. I'm sorry, War Leader, but we're past the discussion phase. You've fired on a civilian colony, which activates certain non-negotiable response protocols. However, I can offer you one opportunity to withdraw. What opportunity? You have exactly 90 seconds to begin retreat procedures before our defensive systems classify your ships as imminent threats, requiring immediate neutralization. Thexmol looked at his tactical display, calculating jump coordinates and escape vectors. 90 seconds was barely enough time to begin emergency departure procedures, much less execute a controlled withdrawal. Sir, his navigator reported, we can attempt emergency jump, but our position relative to the planet's gravity well means significant risk of drive failure. What happens if we stay? His tactical officer consulted her displays with the methodical precision of someone reporting their own death sentence. Based on observed missile capacity and targeting capability, estimated survival time after hostilities commence: 37 seconds. Emergency jump. All ships immediate departure. As Thexmol's destroyers began their frantic escape preparations, Administrator Morrison's voice returned one final time. War Leader, safe travels. Please inform your superiors that New Brisbane remains open for normal commercial traffic. We hold no grudges over professional disagreements. The 3 ships vanished into hyperspace with 17 seconds to spare. 6 hours later, Commodore Zhang's Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Brisbane system. Zhang, a compact woman whose calm demeanor masked 4 decades of military experience, studied the sensor readings with professional interest. Commodore, her intelligence officer reported, long-range scans show evidence of recent weapons fire on the colony surface. Blast patterns consistent with hegemony plasma weapons. Casualties? None reported. Colony Administrator Morrison is requesting permission to dock for routine supply transfer. Zhang smiled. Morrison had been her roommate at the academy 40 years ago, and she knew the administrator's definition of routine could encompass events that would terrify most military commanders. Grant permission, and send a message to Fleet Command. Inform them that first contact with hostile forces has been established. The enemy has tested our outer colony defenses and withdrawn. Request instructions for Phase 2. As the fleet moved into standard supply formation around New Brisbane, Zhang reviewed the tactical reports with growing satisfaction. The galactic species had finally made their move, and humanity was ready, 3 systems over. In the military headquarters of the hegemony, War Leader Thexmol stood before the Supreme Command Council attempting to explain how 3 destroyers had fled from an agricultural colony without firing a shot in return. You're telling us, Supreme Commander Calthix spoke with the deadly calm of a predator selecting prey, that a human farming settlement outgunned 3 of our finest warships? Supreme Commander, the intelligence reports were insufficient. What we attacked was not a farming settlement. It was a disguised military installation with defensive capabilities exceeding our ship killer capacity by significant margins. How significant? Thexmol consulted his tactical records. Conservative estimate suggests they could have destroyed our entire fleet 20 times over without depleting their missile reserves. The silence that followed this announcement stretched until it became physically uncomfortable. Finally, Strategic Advisor Venthara spoke the question that haunted every mind in the chamber. If their outer agricultural colonies possess this level of defensive capability, what must their actual military installations be like? No one attempted to answer. The implications were too disturbing to contemplate. Word of the New Brisbane incident spread through galactic communication networks with the speed of really catastrophic news. Within 48 hours, every major species was reevaluating their intelligence assessments of human capabilities. The war that had begun with such confidence was starting to look like something entirely different from what anyone had planned. The emergency session of the Hegemony Strategic Command lasted 18 hours and accomplished nothing except confirming what everyone already suspected. They had no idea what they were fighting. General Korth paced the length of the tactical display, his insectoid legs clicking against the floor with increasing agitation. Show me the projection again. The holographic display updated to show human space as currently understood by galactic intelligence. 300 systems connected by shipping lanes, with colonies ranging from agricultural settlements to major industrial centers. Standard expansion pattern for a spacefaring civilization. Now overlay the defensive capabilities we observed at New Brisbane. The display shifted to show defensive projections based on War Leader Thexmol's encounter. If every human colony possessed similar capabilities, the result was sobering. The humans weren't just defended, they were an interconnected fortress network spanning a significant portion of the galaxy. This cannot be accurate, insisted Admiral Zephnol of the Naval Command. No species maintains this level of militarization without triggering galactic monitoring systems. Strategic Advisor Venthara manipulated the display to highlight trade routes and commercial traffic. Look at the pattern. Every human agricultural colony sits at strategic shipping intersections. Every mining operation controls resource choke points. Every research station monitors major hyperspace approaches. The implications settled over the room like a toxic cloud. The humans hadn't been expanding randomly, they had been systematically positioning assets to control galactic movement and commerce while maintaining the appearance of peaceful civilian development. How long have they been planning this? General Korth asked. Unknown, Venthara replied. But consider, they've been in contact with galactic civilization for 2 centuries. Plenty of time to study our methods, our strategies, our weaknesses. Before anyone could respond, the Chamber's emergency communication system activated. Supreme Command, this is Fleet Intelligence. We have an urgent transmission from the Zephyrian Expeditionary Force. Put it through. Admiral Cythera's image appeared in the center of the chamber, his usually pristine appearance disheveled, and his chromatic patterns displaying high stress. Supreme Command. The Zephyrian attack on the human system of Kepler 442 has encountered unexpected difficulties. General Korth's mandibles clicked ominously. Define unexpected difficulties. The humans were waiting for us. Waiting? When our fleet dropped out of hyperspace, we found the system fully mobilized. Defensive platforms online, military vessels in formation, civilian traffic cleared from all shipping lanes. They knew we were coming. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. How could they know? Unknown. But Admiral, they sent us a message. What kind of message? Admiral Cythera consulted a datapad with obvious reluctance. They thanked us for providing advance notice of our attack vector and timing. They said it helped them optimize their defensive positioning. The silence that followed this revelation lasted until General Korth found his voice. They thanked you? Yes, sir. They also offered to reschedule the battle if our current timing was inconvenient. What was your response? I ordered immediate attack. All ships maximum firepower. And? Admiral Cythera's chromatic patterns shifted to colors indicating extreme distress. Sir, I need to be clear about what happened next. We engaged with superior numbers and firepower, 43 ships against their local defense force of 12 vessels. Continue. We lost 31 ships in the first 15 minutes. The statement hung in the air like an accusation. 43 ships, a major fleet by any galactic standard, reduced to 12 survivors in a quarter hour. How is that possible? Admiral Zephnal demanded. Their tactics, sir. Nothing we've seen before. They don't fight like any known species. No formations, no standard maneuvers, no predictable responses. Each ship acted independently while maintaining perfect coordination. They adapted to our strategies in real time. Strategic advisor Venthara leaned forward. Explain. When we used standard encirclement tactics, they collapsed their defensive line to a single point and punched through our formation before we could close the trap. When we tried massed fire concentration, they scattered and attacked from 12 different vectors simultaneously. When we attempted retreat, they let us go but disabled our ship's FTL drives. We're effectively stranded until rescue arrives. General Korth studied the tactical implications. They disabled your drives but allowed you to survive? Yes, sir. And they sent another message, which was? They said that destroying fleeing vessels violates human military ethics, but they couldn't allow us to report tactical intelligence while hostilities remained active. They assured us that our crews would receive full prisoner of war protections under something called the Geneva Conventions. What are Geneva Conventions? Unknown, sir, but they sent us a data packet containing detailed information about proper treatment of military prisoners, medical care standards, and communication privileges. Admiral Zephnal's voice climbed to higher registers. They sent you their prisoner treatment manual, complete with a complaint form for reporting any violations. The chamber erupted in confused conversation as military leaders tried to process the concept of an enemy that provided instruction booklets for their own capture. General Korth called for order. What's the current status of your fleet? We're holding position at the edge of the system. The humans have returned to their previous posture and sent a message saying they're available for surrender negotiations whenever we're ready. Surrender negotiations? They've offered to accept our formal surrender and arrange transportation home for our crews. They said they understand that military personnel are often required to follow orders they disagree with, and they hold no personal animosity toward individual soldiers. The conversation was interrupted by another emergency transmission. This time the caller was War Master Theclon of the Crystalline Confederation. Supreme Command, we've just received word from the Galactic Council. The human diplomatic mission on Nexus Prime has requested a formal meeting. What do they want? They're offering to negotiate an end to hostilities. General Korth felt his stress patterns reaching dangerous levels. What are their terms? That's the unusual part, sir. They haven't proposed any terms. They've simply stated that they're willing to discuss a resolution that serves everyone's interests. And they've also sent a gift basket to each council member with a note saying they hope the current unpleasantness won't interfere with ongoing trade relationships. General Korth stared at the communication display, trying to reconcile the reports of devastating military defeats with humans sending gift baskets to their enemies. What kind of gifts? Chocolate, coffee, various human entertainment media, and something called tea, along with a pamphlet about human tourism opportunities. In the span of 2 days, the galactic understanding of human capabilities had shifted from dismissive contempt to confused terror. The humans were simultaneously the most effective military force any species had encountered and the most aggressively polite, as reports continued to arrive from other attack forces, all describing similar patterns of overwhelming defeat followed by offers of refreshments. One thing became clear. The galaxy had declared war on a species that treated warfare as simply another form of social interaction, requiring proper etiquette, and they were very, very good at it. The human diplomatic delegation arrived at Nexus Prime aboard a ship that challenged every assumption the galactic community held about their capabilities. The U.S. Endeavor appeared to be a standard diplomatic vessel, until deep scans revealed hull densities suggesting advanced composite armor, energy signatures indicating military-grade shield generators, and weapon ports disguised as sensor arrays. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped off the transport with the same calm demeanor she had maintained throughout the conflict, carrying a briefcase and wearing what appeared to be a standard business suit. Her small escort consisted of 2 aides and a security officer who looked like she could bench press a shuttlecraft. Chancellor Vexhai met them at the docking bay with appropriate ceremony, though her crystalline form was dimmer than usual, a sign of stress among her species. "Ambassador Chen," she said, "we appreciate your willingness to meet during these difficult circumstances. Chancellor Vexhai, thank you for hosting us. I brought coffee." Sarah gestured to one of her aides, who produced a thermal container and small cups. "I thought we might need caffeine for the discussions ahead." The Chancellor's internal light patterns flickered in confusion. "You brought refreshments to a war negotiation?" "Old habit. Some of our most productive diplomatic sessions happen over coffee. Would you prefer tea?" As they walked toward the diplomatic chambers, Chancellor Vexhai found herself trying to reconcile Sarah's casual demeanor with the reports flooding in from military commands across the galaxy. In the past week, human forces had systematically dismantled every major fleet sent against them, while somehow maintaining perfect courtesy throughout the process. "Ambassador, may I ask about your military's unusual approach to warfare?" Sarah paused to pour coffee for herself. "Unusual how?" "Your forces offer surrender terms to attacking fleets. They provide medical care to enemy wounded. They sent Admiral Cythera's crew a recipe collection. The recipe collection was Lieutenant Morrison's idea. She thought your troops might enjoy human cooking while they waited for transport home. The chocolate chip cookies were particularly popular." "But why?" Sarah considered the question while sipping her coffee. "Chancellor, why did the galaxy declare war on us?" "Your species was deemed a threat to galactic stability. Because we expand too quickly, adapt too well, and don't follow established hierarchies." "Correct." "Well, you were right. We are a threat to your established order." Sarah's tone remained conversational, as if discussing the weather. "The question is what we do about that." They entered the main diplomatic chamber, where representatives from the major galactic powers waited with expressions ranging from nervous to hostile. Sarah set her briefcase on the conference table and opened it, to reveal not weapons or threatening documents, but a collection of data tablets and what appeared to be a thermos of soup. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives of various species classifications," Sarah began, "let's address the obvious questions. First, yes, we've been preparing for this conflict since our first contact with galactic civilization. Second, yes, we're significantly more militarily capable than your intelligence services realized. Third, no, we don't actually want to conquer anyone." General Korth's mandibles clicked aggressively. "Your actions suggest otherwise. General, in the past week, human forces have engaged 12 major fleets totaling over 400 ships. How many enemy casualties have we inflicted?" The question caught him off guard. Casualties? Deaths, General. How many of your people have died in this war? General Korth consulted his datapad, his expression growing increasingly confused. According to reports, 17 casualties across all engagements, all from accidents during emergency evacuations. 17 accidental deaths in a conflict involving hundreds of ships and thousands of personnel. Does that sound like the behavior of a conquering army? Ambassador Telnash projected thoughts into the chamber. Then what do you want? Sarah activated one of her data tablets, and a holographic display showed galactic trade routes, resource distribution, and territorial boundaries. We want the same thing we've always wanted: to trade, explore, and coexist peacefully. The problem is that your current system makes that impossible. Explain. Your galactic order is based on species hierarchy, territorial restrictions, and limited resource access. It's designed to maintain stability through stagnation, but humans don't do stagnation well. Chancellor Vexhi's light patterns shifted to indicate deep thought. So you decided to overthrow our system? No, Chancellor. We decided to prove that your system is unnecessary. Sarah manipulated the display to highlight human trade relationships. In 2 centuries, we've established economic partnerships with over 800 species. We trade with everyone, regardless of their position in your hierarchy. We've developed new technologies, opened new trade routes, and created prosperity for thousands of worlds. Without permission from the Council, Admiral Zephnol pointed out. Without needing permission from the Council, Sarah corrected. That's the point. Your system assumes that galactic civilization requires central control to prevent chaos. We've demonstrated that prosperity and peace can exist without those restrictions. Strategic Advisor Venthara studied the human trade data with obvious unease. Your success destabilizes our authority. Your authority is based on fear of what happens without it. We've shown that those fears are unfounded. General Korth leaned forward. And if we refuse to accept your demonstration? Sarah's expression never changed, but something in her posture shifted slightly. Her security officer, who had been standing quietly near the wall, straightened almost imperceptibly. General, you've seen our defensive capabilities. You've experienced our tactical adaptability. You've witnessed our ability to coordinate complex operations across hundreds of systems, and you've done all of this while we were holding back. Holding back? This conflict has involved our colonial defense forces and a few patrol fleets. Our actual military hasn't been deployed yet. The chamber fell silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Ambassador Telnash finally projected the question everyone was thinking. What would deployment of your actual military look like? Sarah closed her data tablet and stood up. Honestly, we're not sure. We designed our military to fight threats that could endanger human civilization. We've never faced anything that required its full activation. She walked to the chamber's large viewport, which showed the bustling traffic around Nexus Prime. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species going about their daily business. But here's what we do know. Every human colony has defensive capabilities that outmatch your frontline warships. Every human merchant vessel can be converted to military specification within hours. Every human civilian has basic military training. And our industrial capacity. She turned back to face the assembled representatives. Let's just say that if we shifted from a peacetime economy to full wartime production, we could build fleets faster than you could count them. Chancellor Vexhi's light patterns dimmed to barely visible levels. What are you proposing? Simple, end the war. Dissolve the restrictions on human expansion and trade. Allow free movement and commerce throughout galactic space. In exchange, we continue being exactly what we've always been. Traders, explorers, and neighbors. And if we refuse? Sarah's smile never wavered, but her next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you'll discover why humans have survived ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, and 2 world wars. We're very good at adapting to hostile environments. She picked up her briefcase and moved toward the exit. I'll leave you to discuss among yourselves. We'll be in our ship enjoying coffee and probably playing card games. Take all the time you need, we're very patient. As the human delegation left the chamber, the assembled representatives sat in stunned silence, contemplating a choice between accepting human dominance disguised as partnership or discovering what human warfare looked like when they stopped being polite about it. The war was effectively over. The only question remaining was whether the galaxy would surrender gracefully or learn why humans had such detailed prisoner treatment manuals. The vote took place 3 days later in a Galactic Council chamber that felt more like a funeral parlor than the seat of galactic government. Representatives who had arrived flush with war fever now spoke in subdued tones about strategic reassessment and diplomatic solutions. Chancellor HFY called for order with none of her previous authority. The war that had begun with overwhelming confidence had revealed the galactic community's fundamental misunderstanding of power, strategy, and human nature. The motion before us, she announced, is Resolution 247C, formal cessation of hostilities with humanity and recognition of unrestricted human commercial and territorial rights. General Korth, who had spent the past 3 days receiving casualty reports that consistently showed zeros in the enemy dead column, spoke first. The hegemony supports the resolution. Our military assessment concludes that continued hostilities would result in, he paused, consulting his notes, complete strategic defeat with minimal human resource expenditure. Admiral Zephnall of the Naval Command added his voice. The Confederation concurs. Our fleets report human tactical capabilities exceeding all known parameters. Further engagement would be inadvisable. One by one, the votes came in. The species that had declared war with such enthusiasm now competed to see who could surrender most gracefully. The final tally was unanimous. When Ambassador Sarah Shen returned to the chamber to receive the formal surrender documents, she found a gathering that looked nothing like the confident assembly that had declared war a week earlier. Ambassador, Chancellor HFY said, the Galactic Council formally recognizes the cessation of hostilities and agrees to unrestricted human expansion and commercial rights. Thank you, Chancellor. We're pleased that reason has prevailed. May I ask a question that has been troubling many of us? Of course. How long have you been prepared for this conflict? Sarah considered the question with the same calm deliberation she had shown throughout the crisis. Since first contact, we assumed that eventually someone would decide we were a threat. It seemed prudent to prepare for that possibility. 200 years of preparation, more or less. Though preparation might be the wrong word, we simply built our civilization to be resilient. Every colony is self-sufficient because space is dangerous. Every citizen has basic military training because emergencies happen. Every settlement is defensible because the universe contains hostile environments. Strategic Advisor Venthara leaned forward. You militarized your entire civilization? No, we civilianized our military. There's a difference. Ambassador Telnash projected confusion into the chamber. Explain. Military organizations are designed around conflict. Civilian organizations are designed around cooperation. We built a cooperative society that happens to be very good at defending itself when necessary. Chancellor HFY's light patterns shifted to indicate deep contemplation. The prisoner treatment manuals, the gift baskets, the recipes, those weren't psychological warfare tactics. Those were just being polite. When someone attacks you, you defend yourself. But there's no reason to be rude about it. The simplicity of the statement seemed to emphasize how fundamentally the galactic powers had misunderstood human motivations. General Korth clicked his mandibles nervously. What happens now? We go back to doing what we were doing before, trading, exploring, building things. The only difference is that we won't have to work around artificial restrictions on commerce and expansion. And your military forces will return to their normal duties. Colony defense, piracy suppression, emergency response. Same as always, Admiral Zephnall found his voice. You're not going to leverage your military superiority to establish human dominance? Sarah looked genuinely puzzled. Why would we want to dominate anyone? Dominance is expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately counterproductive. It's much easier to trade with free partners than to manage conquered territories. She gathered her papers and prepared to leave. Besides, we learned long ago that the best way to get what you want is to help other people get what they want. Happy trading partners are profitable trading partners. As she reached the exit, Chancellor HFY called out one final question. Ambassador, what would have happened if we had chosen to continue the war? Sarah paused at the doorway and turned back with a slight smile. Chancellor, you really don't want to know, but I will say this. Our military contingency plans have some very creative solutions for ending conflicts quickly. We prefer not to use them. Why? Because they tend to leave craters where civilizations used to be, and craters don't buy our products. 6 months later, The restructured galactic economy was showing unprecedented growth. Trade routes that had been restricted for millennia opened to human merchant vessels. Colonies that had struggled under resource limitations suddenly had access to human agricultural and manufacturing expertise. Technologies that had been closely guarded by individual species became part of collaborative research programs. The hegemony's war leader, Thexmal, found himself commanding escort duties for human merchant convoys, protecting the same trade routes he had once tried to attack. His ships had been retrofitted with human defensive systems that made them more effective than they had ever been under pure hegemony. Technology. Admiral Cythera of the Zephyrian forces discovered that human naval architects could design ships that outperformed traditional Zephyrian vessels while using half the resources. His fleet became a testing ground for hybrid technologies that other species quickly adopted. The Galactic Council found itself restructured as a trade coordination body rather than a governing authority. Chancellor Vexhai, whose light patterns had returned to normal brightness, presided over economic negotiations rather than territorial disputes. Most remarkably, the war criminals who had initiated hostilities against human colonies found themselves invited to human worlds as guests. The same colonies they had attacked welcomed them as visitors, offering tours of the defensive installations that had defeated their fleets. It's quite impressive. War leader Thexmal admitted to Administrator Morrison as they walked through New Brisbane's underground command center. Your defensive coordination is flawless, thank you. Would you like to see the agricultural automation systems? They're actually more complex than the weapons. The transformation was so complete that within a year, most species had difficulty remembering why they had considered humans threatening. The galactic economy was more prosperous than ever. Territorial disputes had largely disappeared, and technological advancement was accelerating at unprecedented rates. The only reminder of the brief war was a small plaque in the human diplomatic offices on Nexus Prime that read, "In memory of the Galactic War of 2387, duration 1 week. Human casualties 0, alien casualties 17 accidental. Friendships formed countless." And in the margin, someone had added in smaller text, "Note, always pack extra coffee for diplomatic missions." The galaxy had declared war on humanity and discovered that humans had been preparing for peace all along. They were just very, very good at convincing people that peace was the better option.